Greetings everybody, Rhadamant here. Thank you for tuning in to a brand new series playing Sumerians. If you would like to skip the game's overview or setup, please use YouTube chapters. Welcome everybody to a brand new stream of Sumerians. So before we start, let me read a little bit about the game. Sumerians is a city builder game set in ancient Mesopotamia. You have to fulfill your citizens' needs to attract new citizens and grow by expanding your irrigation system, building walls, palaces, temples, ziggurats, research new technologies with scribes, manage your production, hire workers, and trade. And I'll be showcasing the game and teaching how to play as I stream. And the difficulty was voted on by YouTube, and you guys voted for it to be on expert difficulty, which is rough, but that's what we're gonna do. So, the first thing I want to ask you is, where should we settle? And I realize these are all names and you don't know what they mean, so let's show you. So there's different plots of land that are predetermined. So I'm going to read them left to right, like I've listed them in the polls. So I'm going to pronounce everything wrong and I don't care. We have Iana here. Next was Logobanda, and then Dumuzid. Then we've got Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is probably the most noteworthy, legend or hero Gilgamesh. Tiamat, that's another, what is that, dragon, I think? We've got Enki, so this one would be like River Nile, Delta type thing, and then Nonorda. And you guys can pick. And what I'm going to be doing here is each map has its own sort of preset game difficulty, but I'm going to be selecting my own. So the way the game difficulty is calculated is it is an average of soil, science, population, and trade. So soil is how well your canals can irrigate non-arable land, and how fast you extract clay, mud, and salt, and the yields of your crop fields. In my opinion, this is kind of probably tied for the most important. The other one would be science. Science is the amount of science points generated from your scribes, and also how many state workers you can have based upon technologies. State workers are ones that you employ yourselves. So like, I want scribes, they're state workers, they work for your state. Or I want haulers, or I want mud diggers or something like that. They're all state workers. There's a finite amount of technologies. Well, that's not true. But state workers are very, very important for growth speed and production, all that stuff. So science is kind of important. Population is how easily the needs of your citizens are satisfied, which also kind of controls their immigration. This one, not so important, because if you're patient, people will immigrate. So this just drives up the immigration rates, really. But immigration happens if you're doing well anyway. And then trade, better or worse trading prices. It costs a little bit more on harder difficulties, not a big deal. So it looks like we're going with some Gilgamesh. If I could find it. There we go. So this is a snaking river. And then I'm going to actually play on a small map tile. And you can pick your specific map tile here. And as you can see, they're all set on medium difficulty, but I'm going to customize that. But I'm going to pick one that is, looks to be a bit more difficult. Maybe this one here, or that one, where there's only a tiny bit of water, so it's going to be challenging for me to aerate. And, well, I'm going to try the top right one and see if there's actually water. No, I'm not going to do that. That might be a waste of time. So we'll go with maybe this tile here. I want a challenge, as you can see. Some of these center tiles are very watery, but we're going to do one that is not, for my own detriment. And then in terms of custom difficulty, it was voted that I go expert, so I'm going to make the game harder. So I think what I want to do is maybe set, as you can see, the difficulty is expert here, which means, it's like the hardest, but like expert could be terrible soil or like decent soil. So I think what I might do is set soil to 3, science to 2, and that still reads as expert. If you're brand new to the game, one thing that you could do is you can set it to easy or beginner. So if you have if you run out of like food and things like that, people will die and you'll have max exodus from your cities. But on easy and beginner difficulties, there's kind of like training wheels where that does not happen. So there we go. Gilgamesh in the lower corner. You can also just like pick your own spot here. So you don't have to pick the predetermined squares. It won't, however, let you settle anywhere that just simply doesn't have water, because there'd be no way to survive without you being able to grow your own wheat. You would just be dead. So I'll pick a custom square here. A little bit extra water. Sounds good. All right, into Gilgamesh we go. So right at the start, all that you can do is to set up a warehouse. You pick your initial warehouse settings, and this is actually a very flat map. So thinking about this, about how to strategize right at the start, most of the green fertile soil should be earmarked for growing. Because if it's not, and you know what? I'm actually going to back out and make it even harder. I want less water. I know, I'm a masochist. That's just how I am. So let's try this one, because this looks brutal with like no growable land. I just want to see what it looks like, because it doesn't take very long to generate a new map. Is there actual water? Yes, there's actual water. Okay, this is perfect. This is a horrible place to set up a city, which is exactly why I like it. My only worry is that we're not going to be able to do trade on the river, because there's like basically no river. So one more time, I'm going to pick that spot, but like give me a little bit more water. So that it's, Man. Alright. Maybe that has terrible elevations, but it has very little water, so I'll take a quick look at this. Alright, this is fine. It's very, very, very little arable land, requiring me to do irrigations and canals, but enough water that it should allow for trade. So right at the start, your initial warehouse, I would suggest building fairly close to the farmable green soil, something like this. And I'm going to pause now and explain a little bit of the UI elements. So at the top left is your research tree. And you start to unlock research once you hit 200 citizens. And these are the trees that you can unlock. Some of the initial ones you're probably going to want to push for is like brick building, and then canals if you have very little water like I do, clay pits, and brewery. Those are kind of the important ones. And then you have these repeatable ones at the end. So you can repeat like steles for max state workers, or debt forgiveness for mass state workers, or epic poems, so on and so forth, or religious hymns. This here is state workers. How many people, how many citizens of your area can actually be directly employed by you, rather than to be employed, self-employed, as like fishers or farmers or something like that. Now, if you want to track resources, there's this button here, and you can just pick your own resources that you want to track. And then remove them if you like. So if there's if you're trying to make fabrics out of wool or linen, but not the other one, you can just like pick and choose whatever you want, which is kind of a nice feature. Grain is sort of your currency and also what keeps you from starving to death. So that's kind of important. And speaking of which, let's create a new seed file, Gilg. All right, down in the bottom left, this is the build menu. And also it's a zoning menu. So kind of like City Skylines or SimCity, you have zoning where you can pick zones. And then you've also got actual structure buildings like warehouses and transporters and the like. The next is your population. So we start off, here's our people. As you can see, just huddled around the initial warehouse. And we've got 40 people. And then the number next to it is your immigrants, or like who's coming in. And you can actually turn this on with this button. It will actually show you when people are immigrating or not. The next one is demands. So demands is important to track because it will show what your people want. So right now we want like housing, we want food, we want citizen workshops, we want market stalls. They want everything. They want religious influence. Religious influence is a way to drive up immigration. The next one is your currency or your stockpile. So this is all your stockpile of everywhere. So like taxes and state workers and haulers and, you know, everything else. Here is the farming calendar. So every year there's a harvest season, a nothing season, end of season, and a growth season. So you employ farmers to be able to feed your people, and it's important to note the growing season, because if you're running out of food and you're just starting to enter the growing season, you're going to have a bad time. And then you have time controls on the bottom left, and on the right, you have land values or demands. These are overlays. So land value, authority, taxes, beautification, security, crime, health, irrigation, water access. So as you can see, the only things that are irrigated for farming would be the blue circles here. The rest of the map is kind of inaccessible as far as like water and irrigation goes. Then this is sort of your full statistics for tracking over time. And we'll get into that later once there's actually information there. This is alerts. Alerts being like, is there a production stall or is there some issue with a facility, etc. And then the game's guide. Now, there is a campaign that walks you through a lot of the game mechanics. I'm just skipping the campaign because the campaign is broken up into 9 separate smaller maps. And they, honestly, they get kind of redundant. They have you do the same thing over and over and over again and then add one more thing, like a reverse nesting doll. So I wanted to skip that. And then, you know, you have the game menu. So difficulty, region, etc. So the first order of business, right when you start off, is to set up farming, because without farming, you are going to starve very badly. So I'm going to set up this farm here. And the way this is it can hire up to 20 state workers. As you can see, a maximum of 20. And it also needs builders. So it needs builders to be able to set this up. And I want to put it like right here where it isn't on the irrigated soil, but it's covers up enough. And then the blue circle is where those farmers can specifically farm. But one farm is not going to be able, 20 workers is not going to be enough people to farm this entire area. All right. The farm also needs builders. So builders will, and this is in the second tab here. So farming is here. Second tab is builders. So builders will only build and transport resources for building around their sphere of influence. And it's less important that the builders are closer to the water. So I'm going to have my builders be maybe here-ish, as these builders here will cover the farm and a little bit of area around the farm for like transporters. Because eventually, once we have a lot of wheat, we're going to want to bring the wheat from the fields to the farm, to the warehouse, and then to like breweries. So there we go. We have builders. Actually, I might not do builders there. Let's do... Let's do builders like this. And there's a bit of a reason for it, which will become obvious later on. And that's really all you need to start. So I'm going to unpause and play slow, and my initial people are able to build the farm and the builders kind of without resources. And right as you start, the big push is going to be to make sure that you get people fed. It'd be nice if they started moving, though. Hello? Alright, I'll put the builder a little bit closer. They're, like, being weird. It doesn't really need to be that far apart. And also, these builder buildings and farmer buildings are kind of free. So they don't require resources, which is really nice. But I am honestly not sure why. Oh, you know, I know what's going on. It's because I haven't actually set up homes for them. So let's do that. So this builder here, I'll put it down one more time, offers a building coverage. And I'm going to set out some initial homes around the builder like this. So we'll have a row of homes like that. I'll put 2 market stalls on either end. I'm going to put one citizen or two citizen workshop. No, maybe just one citizen workshop here. One here. Hope I spaced this out right. Nope, I did not. Let's try that again. And what I'm trying to do is set up like a neighborhood, because a huge part of this game is aesthetics and also sort of a neighborhood structure, and this will become more obvious later on. So I'm only going to have that many houses to start. And yeah, there we go. Now people are moving in and becoming builders and farmers. So the way these work is that these individual structures have certain statistics, and the houses and private workshops. So private workshops are non-state workers. They become better as you provide services for them. So setting everything up in one tight area means that it's going to be easier to provide services for those specific people. Terra Kittens, Flash Firestorm, and Siddhartha Gaia. Thank you for the resubs. So now we have all these people moving in and then going out to the builder's hut. And one thing I would say pretty early on is you want to avoid explosive growth early on until you have the the farmers to actually feed your people, so that you don't have mass famines. And even then, I might end up getting like a bit of a famine early on, because it is pretty challenging to try to get everyone fed your first year, because you kind of skip the skip the growing period. So now I have 7 builders. I select the building. As you can see, they're constructing the builders. And another thing that you can probably see is that they're making their own path. So you can paint your own paths in this game if you want, like this. Or you can just let them, sort of work the soil into a desired path to the point where they, you'll just see natural pathing, which is kind of nice. So current priority right now is set up farming. We're going to have to provide food for our people ASAP. So now that the builders are built, I'm going to hire 10 builders instead of 5. So we have more people building. And in this screen, there's a bunch of different things that we could do. We could change the radius that they work in, but leaving it max radius is kind of fine. We can change the priorities of their building or turn them off. So if I want these builders never to build canals, I can just click that and canals gets turned off. So if you have a builder and you're just like, oh man, I really need them just to make canals, you can hit that button and turn off everything but canals, or hit all the buttons. Hit none and then hit canals or something like that, right? So other things to look at. Another one, let me move this where it should be. Another one is what they keep in stock. So initially, I really only have mud. So I'm going to say keep 150 mud in the builder hut so that they have mud to build with. I can also click this to have it go max. Max is fine, actually. And then if I want the builders to work more efficiently, I can offer them beer. I have no beer because I have no breweries and I have no pottery to put the beer in. So that's not a solution that we can do now. But providing beer to your workers really helps to cut down inefficiencies. So one of the first steps I usually take is to make sure that I start to get pottery and beer brewing early, so that everyone that is working works more quickly and has less spoilage. So now these builders are going to travel up to this farm and get that built. And then as soon as I have the farm built, I'll start putting down the state farms. So there's 2 types of farms. There's state fields, and I employ the farmers, and then anything they farm is mine. Or there's citizen farms. So a citizen farm would be a zoned farm where like your random citizens can farm from themselves. And because I have so little arable land, I'm not going to do a lot of citizen farming early on. What I will do, however, is fishing. I will let my citizens fish for themselves, and I'm going to start a fish market. So I'll set up 3 fishing areas right on the water. And that will allow the fishermen to fish and then to sell their fish on a fish market, which is this, for grain. But I'll put that here. And this fish market is probably going to be outside of the sphere of influence of the builder's hut that I have set up. Yep, it is, which is fine, because I can just set up another temporary builder's hut, as the builder's hut themselves are free, so I can hire and fire and move them around as like a work area. So it's not that important to have a permanent structure for builders, unless you start stockpiling things there. So this builder's hut won't have stockpiled mud, for instance. Now this fish market requires mud as a resource. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a mud pit. And I'm going to put the mud pit as far away from my initial farm as possible. But the mud pit has to be in fertile soil. So I'm going to put the mud pit over here. And I'm going to reduce the amount of workers in the mud pit to 3. I don't need 5 mud pit workers. So 3 people will go out here, hired by the state, to dig up mud for construction. And then because the mud pit is within the builder's sphere of influence, they will supply mud to the builders, and the builders can then use that mud to start to build our cities. And then here, these builders are just totally temporary in order to build the fish market. And the farm is done. So I am going to hire 20 farmers instead of 10, because it's really important to get your farm started. And with the farm selected, I am going to start to lay out my my state fields. Another thing to note is you can rotate around, and then you can copy the rotational angle with these tools here. So I can say, hey, have the same rotational angle as my farm, and then it will align up, as you can see, perfectly parallel to the farm. And because the farmers that are hired out by your state all work the area in the blue circle, it doesn't really matter if these farm fields are like nicely laid out and contiguous or not. They can all be fractured. And then once I get out of the farm painting tool, it will look totally normal anyway, as you'll see. It just looks like farmland. And then if I paint beyond this circle, they just don't work the soil. It's not. So I'm essentially putting down tilled areas, that's all. So now we have our farmers getting hired, and they will start sowing. Actually, what planting season is it? It's growing season. So it's right at the start of the growing season. Maybe they start to get things seeded. We'll see. All right. Then another important thing to do is to set up some transportation. So I'm going to set up a donkey transporter. And I'm going to put the donkey transporter. This specific donkey transporter is going to be specialized for farming to help clear the farm of wheat and store it. So I'm going to put that right next to the farming spot. And then I'm also going to put a livestock field for donkeys so that the transporter breeds their own donkeys. So that if I want more donkeys for transportation, I can get more. And there's different types of transportation. There's also oxen carts that you can unlock through research later on. So here you can see all 20 of the farmers that I have hired, and they're heading out to the farming area, and then soon, I hope, they start seeding the fields. Now over here, the first upgrade to the houses is a mud wall. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit because it gets important to manage your walls. So your mud walls you can lay out and your builders will build them. And then you can add gates to the walls. But there's some important things to note. If you ever want to expand your mud walls, anytime that your mud wall, like let's say I have a complete mud wall, and I'll just make a complete mud wall. Let's say I have a complete mud wall around my center square. And then I'm like, oh, you know what? I need more room. I am going to delete these mud walls here. And then all of a sudden, your center square only has mud walls on 3 sides. Your entire city will downgrade to the lowest tier immediately. So when you're setting up your mud walls, you can either have gated sections between smaller areas, or to build an entire construction around like everything that you're going to want to expand. And I highly suggest building smaller suburbs, if you will. And the things that they want here is water access. So that could either be water from canals from your river or from wells. And I usually go wells just because they're easier to manage. They want land value, which is just like, is there services? Is it beautiful? Is there authority? Authority is like sort of, you know, security, but it's more like walls. Then also, is there health and security? So security is armed guard posts that reduce crime and increase security, or provide security, increase authority. And then doctors, which provide health and increase authority as well. So the guard posts and the doctors posts have sort of a finite sphere of influence, and it's important to sort of design your suburbs with those in mind. Then also, there are certain structures. There's mud temples, there's small temples, big temples, and ziggurats. And your mud temple can be built out in the open anywhere, but the increased temples require better walls. So mud are better, brick wall are better, high wall are better. So when you want to provide religion for your people, you also need to put these structures within a walled area, or they can't be built. And there's one other thing that needs a walled area, which is governance. So once you get 200 citizens, you can get a council of elders, where you start to hire scribes to do research. And they can be built outside of walls, but better scribes require better walls, just like before. So when you're planning out your cities, you're going to want to plan so that you have easy sort of transportation between sections of your city. The only things that really need walls is your research, your religion, and then your houses and small businesses. And then other production facilities like farms don't need to be in a wall. Same with the fish market, the mud pit. These things don't care about walls at all. So when you're planning these out, you need to plan. Well, you don't need to plan, but you should plan with that in mind so that you are designing suburbs and areas that can support themselves and grow and change over time. So let's go ahead, and this starting area, we will start to wall up. And I'm going to have a pretty generous area around it. And one of the nice things about the map tile that I selected here is my starting map tile has quite a lot of flat territory. So it's going to be really easy to build with that in mind. And I'm going to add gates around here so that we can expand. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make the decision to not really expand in this direction. So I'll expand towards the center of my small map tile. All of these walls and gates, oh, we can put some gates in the back too. All these walls and the gates are within this builder's sphere of influence. And this builder is close enough to the mud pit that the mud workers will supply mud for all of those initial walls. The other thing that I could do, so once you start with mud, you can either build walls or build a mud temple. And I'm going to build walls first because the mud temple will drive up, it will provide religious influence, but that will drive up immigration. And getting a lot of immigrants really early on means there's a lot more mouths to feed, which could be really dangerous. Because right now, nothing is seeded in this barley field because I missed the season to sow crop here, the planting season, which means I am just completely coasting on the stockpile from the start of the game. It's really, like I said, it's really challenging to actually feed your people day one. So I'm going to bring my transporters down to just 4. I don't need too much transportation right now. But the transportation will also bring stuff from your mud pit to your walls and things like that. So what I can do here is I'll set up some custom transportation. Order number 1. Deliver grain from the farm to the warehouse. Order type is permanent. And then order number 2 is deliver mud from the mud pit to the builders. Oops, that's livestock. To the builders. Done. And then I'll do that again. Deliver. No, that's good. I don't need mud in the temporary builders. So there we go. Now there's... What they do is they will work on their orders and also priorities. So the priority of this transporter is to service farming first, then walls, then production, then transportation between storage buildings, and then finally trade. So this transporters here is primarily the farming transporter. Oh, and I think we are starting to see the fields. Good. So here, as you can see, all the farmers are tilling and seeding, sowing the fields. And as you can see, my wheat is running out. And I do probably predict that we're going to have a bit of a rough starvation really early on. You usually do on harder difficulties because you don't start with so much stuff. Wow, it's so flat. That's so nice. So looking at the demand wheel, food and market stalls are in most demand, but not really high. People want to live in the city, but there's not going to be too much immigrants because there's not a lot of housing, and I don't have religious authority, so I'm not prioritizing them. Hey, look at that. All of the farm fields actually got sown, so I'm going to add some additional ones. So I will make sure it snaps to the original farm grid. And I'm going to try to use up all of the territory that I have available to me, because there's only a real small slice of fertile soil by the river. And I'm bumping into the fishing docks, but that's fine. Having a source of fish is also, desirable for people. All right, well, there we go. More barley fields. And there's other crops as well. There's flax for linen and sesame, which comes later on as part of medicine and also religious offerings. And at the moment, the livestock, we don't have any donkeys, and buying donkeys require wheat. So I'm going to fire the livestock worker because I don't have the wheat to be able to buy a donkey, and there's no point in hiring someone to look after an empty pasture. The farmers are continuing to sow. You know what I might do? I might just try to fill in everything within the initial blue farming area. My farmers are overachievers and sow everything in there. That works for me. And this is plenty of wheat. This is like quite a lot of wheat that I've got going on right now, which should be fine to feed our growing city, our little Gilgamesh. Cool. Yeah, the wheat is really dropping. The other thing I can start to track now, because we are gathering mud, is mud. So we have 65 of it. And then let's also track fish. I have 0 of it now, but we do have workers working as fishermen, so it's only a matter of time until we start to get some fish as well. Now the wheat down here is in red. It's warning me that I'm really low. Where am I in the growing season now? Oh, boy. Yeah, we're going to have some famine. No two ways about it. But after the first harvest, it should be fine. Because this is quite a lot of fields that have been sown. So now that the farms are all set up, the next priority is build walls around the initial houses. The state has run out of grain to pay salaries, and several factions have fought for power. 20 people have died or left the city, and 280 grain has been raised to restore the state. So it's sort of a so that you don't lose, you know, you can, with penalties, you can get a little bit extra food. And that grain should be enough to tide us over to the harvest period, which is coming up. So hopefully that's the first and only famine. But as you can see, we have some ruins here where local factions have destroyed some houses and there was a little bit of an exodus, so people left. There we go. Now they're starting to do the harvest. And now that they're harvesting, I'm going to hire more transporters to help move the wheat out of the fields into the warehouse. And then the warehouse also has workers. So this warehouse is stockpiled 102 of our wheat right now. But as we pull the wheat out of the farm fields, more will be stocked. Oh god, don't hit 0 before you pull the wheat into the stocks. There we go. All right. The numbers are starting to go up. They're going in the right direction. I was worried about that. Sort of in the right direction. Come on, transporters. Move that wheat. I don't want more local warring factions. Oh god, it's so tight. Yeah. All right, as they're all these farmers are hauling it in, we should be okay. I hope. I don't know. It's teeter-tottering on scary levels, but we'll keep an eye on that. I'm going to hire some more builders to help out with the fish market and also with the walls. And another thing I could do is to set up a second farm out here. And I'll just stick it here because that overlaps almost perfectly with the original circle so that I can hire more than 20 farmers. I've always found, in the few different playthroughs I've done of this myself, I've always found that the initial push is difficult just to try to get enough people farming the lands to avoid the starting starvations. And it's obviously going to happen again. As despite the fact of the incredibly large harvest in the fields, maybe I'll even do more transporters, they didn't pull enough of the grain from the fields before it went bad, which is unfortunate. But fewer people to feed means it's going to be easier to avoid famine in the future. So now you can actually see the transporters, which are the indicated ones, because I have the transporter selected. The transporters are actually moving the wheat this time. So as you can see, now my wheat is up into the 700 range. The amount of wheat that we had there that like just didn't get hauled in time was like a few thousand, which is, you know, occasionally really frustrating. But hopefully this season things go better for us. Because this should be enough to ride on for the remainder of the year, I hope. And the many farmers are now sowing like everything out here. Yeah, look at all that got sown. Fingers crossed. New city struggle. Thank you for tuning in to Sumerians, which originally streamed live on Twitch November 28th. If you have any feedback or questions for me, let me know in the comments below. If you would like to catch a live stream of mine, Rhadamant.com has my stream schedule and countdown timers to upcoming streams. If you would like to join my online gaming community on Discord, a link can be found in the description of this video or at Rhadamant.com. Thank you so very much for watching, and a special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. I hope to catch you next episode or an upcoming stream of another game. Farewell, my fellow Sumerians.